Wow, it's very nice to see you, Joyce, and a very warm welcome to this conversation. We've been looking forward to this. We have postponed several times, but we are finally here. I'm very, very excited to introduce you to my audience. My name is Christine Mweteeli, and this is Soft Skills Conversations. Today, I'm very privileged to have Joyce Owaga, who I have known since we were teenagers. We were in school together. I will let her introduce herself. But this is Soft Skills Conversations, where we have informal but informative conversations. We make this completely unscripted, and we just want to speak and have our thoughts help and grow and enrich another person's life. So Joyce, if you just introduce yourself and let the audience know who you are.
Thank you very much, Christine. My name is Joyce Owaga. As Christine has mentioned, we've known each other like for a long, long time. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
I'm wondering where to
in
start.
high school together, and then we were in college together. So we do have quite a bit of history, although we now live on opposite ends of the earth. Maybe you give us a little background on, maybe let's start with your family. Let's start with your family. Let us know, do you have any children? Just talk to us about your family.
Okay. So yes, I'm Joyce Owaga. I have 3 children, 3 boys, Victor, Wayne, and Prince. Their ages 26. Ooh, I'm old. 21 and 15. I didn't realize that, but yes, those are my 3 sons. Currently married again for a number of times. I've been widowed, I've been divorced, and now I'm remarried. So there is hope for everybody, and I'm not ashamed about it. I like to share it because I know it's a testimony, and it helps other people to feel that there is hope for them.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I like that you mentioned that, because a lot of people think that you only get one shot at marriage. And we are going to get into all of that. But let's first of all talk about your work path, because I want us to relate that to how your family life and your history and all of that has informed the choices that you have made and has led you into the career path that you're in right now. You took a complete change. For me, let me confess, it was a bit of a shock, because
Yes.
we graduated with you with Bachelor of Commerce in marketing. And so when you left, we at first got into commerce related kinds of jobs and businesses, but you completely took a shift. Maybe you enlighten us on how that went.
That happened. So yeah, like Christine has mentioned, when I started, we did BCom, we were into marketing. I enjoyed doing marketing, did that for over 10 years. And then while I was doing that, my husband got sick, and so I had to take care of him. I became a caregiver, not by choice. I just found myself a caregiver because my spouse was sick. His sickness took me through a period of about a year in and out of the hospital, mostly in the hospital. And while he was in the hospital, of course, now I'm a caregiver. I had to learn how to take care of him. He was in Kenyatta Hospital, though it was the private wing. There were other patients there. I found myself having to not only take care of him, but to take care of the other patients that he was sharing a ward with. And so I had to wash them, I had to feed them, ask their medicine. I found myself having to be an advocate for my husband now, asking the doctors questions, about his sickness, what was going on. And very long but very interesting experience that went in there. I knew that there were some mistakes that were made while he was there. Didn't quite know what they were because I did not have that background knowledge in in the medical field, and so I didn't ask the right questions. But your instinct, you always feel like something's not right, and so I had questions here and there that I asked. But that experience with him in the hospital, unfortunately, he did not make it, so he passed away, and it left me with a lot of questions. As his sickness progressed, towards the end of life, he had gotten to a point where he was now getting confused, starting to hallucinate, and he would always tell me, while he was still okay, he always told me, I think you missed your calling. And I would tell him, what do you mean I missed my calling? He said, I think you need to be a nurse. I said, no, I'm in business. I like marketing. I like traveling. I can't do nursing. He said, I think you can be a nurse because of the way you've taken care of me and taken care of the other patients. But, you know, I didn't take too much out of it. I was like, you're my husband. I have to take care of you. I mean, I don't have a choice. But towards his, the last days of his life, he kept hallucinating and he would talk to me about Florence Nightingale. I had never heard about Florence Nightingale. So I was like, who is she? And what does it matter? You know, and he kept, you know, he would in and out and he'd say, I can see you as a Florence Nightingale. And I'm like, who is Florence Nightingale? And of course, because he was sick, I dismissed it. I was like, you know what? This guy is hallucinating. You know, when he feels better, he'll be okay. I mean, whoever Florence is, whatever, you know, never thought anything about it. So fast forward, he passes away and I'm trying to survive life in Kenya when you're a widow. I was widowed at 30 years old. 2 children, oldest was 5 years old, youngest was 6 months years old. Life was difficult. When you're young, it's difficult, but it was even made harder, I think, by the culture that we have in Kenya. You're judged. I had people who told me I had killed my husband. I had people who were scared of me because they thought I was going to steal their husbands. And so there was all of that. And so I got to a point where I wanted out. And my prayer, being a Christian, I was like, God, help me find a way to get out of this country so that I can go to a place where I can start over, where nobody knows me, where I'm not judged, where I can start afresh. Years later, I meet this Nigerian who was in Kenya on business, get talking and get a friendship. And long story short, I end up in the United States. And so while I'm in the United States, that Nightingale thing keeps bugging me. And I'm like, what is this about this Nightingale? You know, when I come to the United States, of course, my background was in BCom, but this is a new country, new culture, a lot of culture shocks, the weather, everything. One of the culture shocks was you have to reinvent yourself. And so I was like, okay, where do I start? So the first easiest job to get was working in what we call here nursing homes. I'm sure they call nursing homes everywhere. But as I started caring for these people, again, there was that feeling of, this is what I need to do. But I was like, I'm not going to work in a nursing home all my life. So I did the nursing home part-time. And then I was also teaching. You know, teaching in the United States is a different ballgame because I ended up teaching. And as I was teaching, the kids here do not listen. So it was like, oh my goodness, I can't see myself doing this for 10 years. So I did it for 3 years. And at that point I had it. I was like, you know what, I'm done. It was at that point that I decided. I had a neighbor who kept telling me, Joyce, I think you need to go into nursing. You have the heart. And I was like, that would mean I start my career over. I should be like, yes, but I think that's what you need to do. Long story short, I went into nursing school. And I'm glad that I went into nursing school. So I was working while going through nursing school, and I enjoyed my nursing school. One of the things nursing school did for me was that for the first time, I was able to heal. I realized from the time my husband died, I had never mourned him, I guess, because I had a baby who was breastfeeding. I was young, too much going on. So I had never stopped to mourn because my children were young. I had to show them that I was strong. So during one of my clinical rotations, I'm given a dead person to take care of. Now, fortunately or fortunately, this person was exactly the same age my husband was when he died. And he was Black. So I'm like, instead of looking at this dead person, I'm seeing my husband. And I cried so much. Oh, you know, I'm trying to clean this guy. My instructor is like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm crying. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on, you know. But they gave me time, went through it. And of course, after that, my colleagues were all, okay, you need to tell us what that's about. And so I explained to them I had lost my husband. And of course, by the time I finished my story, the whole class was crying. The instructor was crying and all that. But it brought healing to me. I realized I had this like an emotions that I had bottled up that I had never talked about. And so
like you had never allowed yourself to feel the pain. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct.
Okay.
never allowed myself to feel the pain, never cried, almost like I was in denial. And I had been angry at God. I had prayed when this man.
During the funeral, you did not cry?
Never. Not one time.
Okay.
Not one time did I cry.
So deep.
I kept it all down. And some of they're not crying, I guess, even the people who are saying she's killed her husband, she's not showing any emotions. Okay.
But now that I look, and you maybe in hindsight, I'm able to understand you because you had gone through a period of nursing him for a long time. So
correct.
Physically, you knew he was going. So you had processed that somewhat.
I didn't. He had been sick a long time, and I had prayed, and I knew that God was going to heal him. Now, this is what the interesting thing. Night he died, I had a dream, and in this dream, almost like what Jacob, I don't know what Jacob went through, but I fought with God, literally, like I know that I fought with somebody. And at the end of this fight, I was so exhausted. And all I could do was I woke up singing, "It is well with my soul." So I wake up that morning and I go to the hospital and I look at, he was in ICU. So I peep in, I don't see the bed, his bed there. And of course, I can see the nurses walking back. I don't know. And finally, I saw one lady who looked like the charge. She was in charge. And I'm like, "Can I talk to you?" And I told her, "Stop being scared. I know he's dead." She's like, "Did somebody talk to you?" I said, "No." She called me to her office. She's like, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah." So I asked her, "Did he die at 3 a.m.? She looked at me. She said, "Yes." She said, "How did you know?" I said, "God told me." She's looking at me like, "God told you? How does God talk?" God told me. So it was 3 o'clock because that's the time that I had this dream, and that's the time I had woken up and started singing, "It is well with my soul." And a peace of God came upon me and strength that I couldn't explain. And I told them, "Can I see him?" So they showed me the room where he was. He had been bagged. I open and zip the bag. I look at his face and I say, "Buddy, umeniwacha kwa bus stop." I look at him. His face looked like he smiled. I smiled back. I zipped the bag and I walked out. The nurses are like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah." And they're looking at me. And I was okay. Like I was sincerely okay. I can't explain it. I can only say I was okay. After my brother-in-law came, he was crying, falling down. I'm looking at them like, nothing.
Okay.
Nothing. And then, of course, after that, organized for the funeral, which was also a long story, but I was glad that God gave me the strength to do it, because even to today, I cannot explain it. It's only that when I look back, now I realize. And now the healing for me, when now I was talking about my patient, I had to bag this patient. And it was in doing that it's like I now realized.
You relieved the experience of zipping your husband's bag when you had to zip this other patient's bag.
Yes.
So your mind transformed to that position again, and now the emotions all came out.
Everything came out. Okay. So it was like it had happened now.
Okay.
Because I must have been in that patient's room for maybe 3 hours. I mean, I cried. I just let it all out. But after that, I just realized that, and then washed my face.
You felt like you had put down a burden that you have been carrying all this while.
Yes.
Wow. Human brain and human emotion cannot be understood.
Yes. And it was, I mean, I was glad that happened.
Did you feel at that point that this is why I became a nurse?
Yes.
Like it all
because
came together.
Yeah, it was after that I realized it almost, for me, it was like one of the first confirmations that, yes, this is what I'm called to be. Okay? And so, of course, later on, I finished my nursing school. First time I hear about Florence Nightingale is during my graduation.
The whole
Because
time in nursing school, no one talked about Florence.
nobody talked about nursing.
I
Because
know
this
about Florence Nightingale, and I'm not even a nurse.
probably it was mentioned. Joyce never paid attention.
Yeah, you didn't pick it.
I didn't pay
It
attention.
didn't ring a bell in your mind. Okay.
Yes. But during the graduation, because we had to graduate in these dresses and the cap, you know, the old hats that the nurses used to put on.
Actually, nurses used to wear that. It's been a long
Yes,
time.
and during graduation, we have to put that on. And then we say the Florence Nightingale pledge. And then my instructor comes out and she's like, Joyce, you start the pledge. And I'm saying it, but I'm like an out-of-body experience. So I'm in my graduation, I'm saying it, but I'm not there. When we finish, my friends are like, you know, you were saying that thing, but you had this on your face and you were funny. And I'm like, I felt funny. So there was this friend of mine called Brenda. I had told Brenda my story. And she said, and Brenda is a pastor's wife. So she's like, Joyce, I think God is telling you something. I said, yeah, I think so too. So that was the second confirmation that I'm in the right profession. And then, of course, I finished nursing school and go into my first job. And then my first job was in what we call step-down ICU. My husband had died in ICU. So I'm in step-down ICU. And the patients I'm dealing with are patients that are chronically sick.
Step-down ICU, for my benefit, I'm not sure. What's the difference between ICU and step-down ICU?
Step-down ICU is the ones that are now being removed from ICU. They are not as critical. They are more stable.
It's called HDU. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's HDU.
High dependency unit, correct. Yes,
okay.
yes.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's the same, yeah. Okay. So I'm working in ICU, and the benefit of working in ICU as a new graduate was you learn a lot. I mean, you're told everything. You learn how to move fast, because these patients, even though they are stable, they are critical and they can be unstable anytime. So the skills that I learned were good. It was hard, but it was good. Here in America, they have a saying that nurses eat their own young. So I had one of the older nurses who was just mean, but I was so determined. I remember her one day coming and telling me, Joyce, I will break you. I told her, I'm made from a different material. You cannot break me. You will never be able to break me. And I am so focused on my assignment that you can't break me. And she tried everything, she couldn't. But after that, I got so tired of the negative.
I'm just thinking to myself, is it deliberate to want to break somebody?
It's deliberate, and it's an old thing that they've passed down, that, you know how bullying used to be in Kenya? Like you bully the monos to...
I'm thinking more like mothers-in-law, the way it's just culture.
Yes.
For someone to terrorize their daughter-in-law.
To terrorize you so that you learn.
Behind it. Okay.
According to them, they are teaching you, you're building muscle. They're pushing, they are pushing you. What is your breaking point? Because you're going to meet difficult situations. So in a way, it's good. For me, it worked out. Remember, we had been in Kenya, we had been in NYS. If NYS didn't break us, nothing was going to break us. So I was like, I survived NYS. This is nothing. This is a no-brainer for me. I would see other nurses crying. They would leave their jobs. I'm like, God. My other thing was that I always told myself, God, you have brought me this far for a reason, you know, because I was like, God, there has to be something. There has to be a reason for this. And I still don't know what it is, but there has to be a reason. And so that I always kept that at the back of my mind. There is a reason for this. God does not waste his pain. He does not waste your experience. So I had that coming with me. And so after I finished, you know, I worked in this place for 2 years. And at the end of the second year, I am like tired of it because the negativity and all that. The third miracle or confirmation for me that this is where God wanted me to be. Somebody always told me that when God is in something, you don't struggle. So I was so fed up. That weekend I had worked and I had gone home and I was like, God, if I don't have a job by Monday, I'm not coming back to this job. So I leave that weekend. There was a neighbor of mine. I call her and I tell her, I need to find another job because this is not working for me. So she tells me, Joyce, there's a home health. Home health is like nurses that you work on one-on-one patients. So she said, there's this agency.
A patient who is at home, not
Who
necessarily.
is at home. So they are chronically ill. So they are nurses sent to them to work with them at home. So she said, there's this agency. She gave me the name. The agency was like, do you want to start today? I'm like, yes, sign up. Give me my first assignment. My first assignment was this young child that I went to. But before I go to this young child, because his story is extremely interesting, on that weekend, mail came, you know, it's almost like junk mail came into my post box, and it was an advert showing that the Veterans Hospital was employing nurses and they had an open house. It was that Saturday. So I looked and I was like, it's Saturday, I'm not doing anything at home. I'm like, you know what, let me go. It was like 10 minutes from my house. So I drive, go there. I didn't know for you to work in the Veterans Hospital, first of all, you have to be an American citizen, which I was, so that was okay. But secondly, you have to have gone to their website, registered yourself. So it's a long process before you can now be able to work for them. I didn't know that whole process. It was so amazing that I find one of these nurses, she calls me and she filled in everything for me, filled in for me the profile, filled in for me the questionnaire for the job. They interviewed me and gave me the job. Never looked for it. Okay. Right there. Okay. That was, it can't be coincidence. That was God. This is a veterans hospital. Remember Florence Nightingale? Florence Nightingale worked with soldiers.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did.
For the first time, it hit me that my husband was never hallucinating.
He was speaking the spirit.
He was seeing something that I was not seeing.
Okay.
So I get the job with the Veterans Hospital. But of course, I'm still doing my part-time job, which is this home health care. Home health care, I'm assigned to a patient, young man. He had been given, he was a baby then. This baby had been given 6 months to live. His parents were drug addicts, so he was thrown, here we call it, he was put in the system. Being put in the system means you have foster children that adopt you, they stay with you for a while, you know, another family takes you up. And so this particular family that had taken him, or taken care of him, and he'd been given 6 months. So I go and see him, and the foster parents explain to him his situation. And I just fall in love with this child. And I'm like, he looks at me and I look at him. I tell him, I think I've been sent to you. So the first time I take this child for his hospital appointment, the doctor is shocked to see him. So the doctor looks at him and says, you're still alive? And I'm looking at the doctor. Does he look dead? He's alive, and he's going to be alive for a long time. So the doctor apologizes and says, oh, so Joyce, I'm sorry. It's just that he was in the system and then he dropped out and we haven't seen him for a while. When we don't see those kind of children for a while, we assume they passed away. So I was just shocked to see him. I said, well, he's alive, and you and me are going to make sure he stays alive for a long time. The doctor is like, okay, you're speaking with a lot of authority. Like, and I could see the authority, like I was like ordering him. Usually you're not supposed to order the doctors, but I was almost, he said, later on as we talked, he told me, you spoke with so much authority that day, I knew it wasn't you. I knew that God was speaking to me through this. Back on this child and treats him, he goes through a series of surgeries. I think in total he's had like 36 surgeries.
Oh boy.
Yes, that this is the good news. As I worked with this child, he had an issue because he had been born prematurely. The parents had been on drugs and all that. So his vocal cords had been affected. He had a trach. This child is the one who taught me how to do trach care. I would do trach care on him. Sometimes he'd take the trach, hide it. I would think he's passed out. I'm panicking. And then he gives me the trach and shows me.
That tube that you put through the nose?
The tube that you put through, he had a hole right here.
Okay, for feeding, right?
No, for breathing.
Letting out the air. Okay, yeah.
Yes.
In medical.
Yeah. Anyway, so fast forward. As this child, of course, these are now the foster parents. They had been told this child is never going to talk. They always have a trick. And I would pray for this child every time I went to work with him. I'd pray for him that one day he'll be able to talk. And I would tell the mom, this child is going to be able to talk. And say, no, the doctor said he's never going to talk. And I said, you're doubting. I'm going to teach him Swahili so that the first day that he ever talks, he will speak Swahili. So I worked with this child for about 6 months. One night, this child is sleeping, wakes up around 3 o'clock in the morning, starts speaking Swahili. The mom calls me, she's like in shock. Joyce, your baby is speaking Swahili. We cannot understand. We know it's Swahili because you're the only one who talks.
Things we cannot understand.
Yes. And I come the next day to work and the child is talking. That's how that child started talking. As we speak today, this child is 8 years old. He just celebrated his 8th birthday.
Oh my God.
He is well. He speaks Swahili, disturbs the teacher in class because when he's tired of English, he switches off to Swahili and he starts answering them questions in Swahili.
That is a miracle.
God reminded me, and it was at that time that God told me, I have not called you to be a nurse. I don't want you to treat this job as a job. I have called you to partner with me in the ministry of healing. Understand this, you are called to partner with me in the ministry of healing. I realized I had watched a miracle happen in front of me without even knowing.
A lot of the times we assume that even when we are talking about God, we tend to see that God's work is done by ordained ministers.
Yes.
Yet God's, actually, maybe I would ask that question. What would you say is the relation between your calling and your faith? In other words, what's the connection between what I believe, what's my relationship with God or with Spirit, and what does that have to do with what I do every day? Because a lot of the times we will find a job for the purpose of paying our bills. But from what you're saying that there's a greater purpose, because a lot of the people will ask, what is my calling? What should I be doing? When I do these trainings and you're familiar with my work, many people will come on and tell us, I don't know what I should do. I know I need to do this. I'm not happy with my job, but I don't know what to do. I don't have a job. My business has crashed. And especially post-COVID, a lot of people will say, I don't know what to do. So what would be your advice to someone who is trying to identify their calling?
First of all, when it is your calling, from my experience, when it is your calling, you don't struggle. Remember, I had been in marketing. We did BCom with you. And part of our experience, we tried. I mean, we did business after business. I want to say I struggled all my time with my BCom degree. Okay. My last job was with T-Board of Kenya. That I would say have been the most stable job. But even then, what was I being paid? 25,000 Kenya shillings. With my nursing job, never struggled. I have never looked for a job one day. I have been called to jobs. The jobs follow me. They are more than I can service. So you do not struggle. Secondly, God gives you a peace about it. It is something that when you're in, you flow and things just line up for you, And I want to break it down so that it's not, because sometimes as Christian, we use a lot of cliches that people don't understand. But I mean, from my experience, it's every time it's anything to do with the nursing, the medical field, it flows. I have people who sometimes just call me, Joyce, I want you to do this and this for me. My patients, I go to my patients, and since I got that revelation of God reminding me that I've called you into the ministry of healing, I am intentional. Even with my treatment with their patients, I pray for their medicine. I pray for their vitals when I'm taking their blood pressures and everything. I pray for each of my patients. They know me, my colleagues know when they have it, go pray for that patient. I'm known as the praying nurse. Which for me is okay, Another thing, I think when it is your, and I'm trying to see how to put the relationship between your calling and your spiritual life, your purpose must be bigger than you.
Oh, I like that a lot. I like that.
Okay. It must be bigger than you. And bigger than you means you cannot do it by yourself. and therefore you can never take the glory. Okay. When you look back at all your experiences, sometimes I used to wonder, where does my marketing come in? Where does my teaching come in to all this? Sometimes I'd be like, God, did I just go to school for all this to be wasted? No, it has all been used or will be used.
Okay.
Right now, being in the marketing field, I'm now an advanced registered nurse, so I can work as an educator. I am at that position where I can start my own agency. The business part is going to come in.
Yes, your business acumen, your business training is good.
Yes.
I completely agree with you that nothing that you have experienced goes to waste. So God has brought you down this entire road, this path, and every stage along the way you picked up information and knowledge and contacts that are going to become useful to you in the future. So let's fast forward to where you are now. I'm aware that you're very passionate about helping people who find themselves caregivers. I'm not trained as a nurse, but my parents are aging. I'm able to relate to that because my own parents are aging and they now require some level of medical care. So what would you advise someone who finds themselves in the position of a caregiver?
Okay, first, before I say that somebody who finds themselves in the position of a caregiver, I want to tell all of us that at one point in our lives, each one of us is going to be a caregiver, either to somebody else or to ourselves. So there are 4 stages of caregiving. You're either currently a caregiver, you have been a caregiver, you will be a caregiver, or to somebody else, or finally, you will be your own caregiver. So all of us need to understand that at one point in our life, we are going to go through that state of being a caregiver. The caregiving, unfortunately, does not ask you for permission. You find yourself a caregiver. In my case, I didn't plan for my husband to be sick. We were a young couple. You know, he had his career, I had my career. He gets sick. I am the caregiver. So I think it is important for all of us to have that mindset that at one point in our lives, we will end up caregivers, either to somebody else or to ourselves. So that when that time comes, it doesn't shock you because it doesn't give you time to plan. But if you're proactive about it, that at one point, this thing can come to me. You've talked about your parents. All of us at our age right now, we know our parents are either in their 70s and their 80s. They are going to be suffering from, first of all, maybe dementia. They're starting to forget things, diabetes, hypertension. So at some point, they are going to need our help. We need to start planning now. When that time comes, when my parents need me to be their caregiver, what will I do? Am I in that position where I'm able to switch my schedule to accommodate them? Okay. When it comes, do I have that group of friends? Because you're going to need support. Do I have a support group of people that today, if, for example, somebody, your parent, got, say, hypertension, do you have a support group of a doctor who you can ask, okay, my dad has been diagnosed with this. What do I need to know? Where do I need to go? What can I do? Do I have a support group of people who today, say, my mom or my dad becomes disabled or is bedridden, that I can go to and have these people pray with you, support you, help you? You know, are you also helping somebody else at this point? So we need to be able to kind of factor that into our lives, that that is coming. And since it is coming, we have to be proactive about it. We have to start remembering that we are going to do. Are there agencies that are you know, like nursing homes or health places that you can start even taking an insurance for, paying money for, putting money aside for, so that when that time comes, you get that help? Because the truth is, it is coming. It's a matter of time.
You sound like an insurance person right there.
Yes. If the only insurance policy I would sell would be for that one, because it's coming.
Because that one is something that now, as you say that, it comes to my mind that a lot of us have a mistrust for the medical profession to the extent that it's been commercialized. So that then if I am the patient, or if my loved one is the patient, and especially when our family member is terminal,
Mm-hmm.
there is the desperation that kicks in. And when it does, the impression that we get, those of us who are not in the medical field, is that we get exploited by the medical field. We sign everything. We are trying this. I remember my late mother-in-law at one point, she had a stroke and was in hospital, and the doctor would come in the morning and give a report. We are trying this, we are trying that. And he would mention complicated medications. We tried this. And when the bill comes, what he was trying was costing me a fortune, when it shows us. So what would you advise people? What kind of caution can you take against exploitation by the medical or by the pharmaceutical industry?
Okay. First of all, I would advise everybody to look at healthcare as a three-legged stool, okay? Where the patient, you have the patient, then you have the nurses or the doctors, the people who are helping you, and then you have the family. Okay? So all three of you must work together. Now, how are you, the patient, or you, the family member, going to work with the doctors, the nurses, the medical people? You can only work with them if you are informed. Thank God for Google. Okay? Google has a lot of information. It might not have the specifics, but it has. A doctor is telling you a medication you don't have, pull up your phone. Google that medicine. Google what is this medicine that he has talked about. What is this condition? What are the side effects? What this and this and this? Your patient, before you take them to the hospital, what are their symptoms? The things that the doctors are testing out, they call it ruling out. So we are ruling out. So it's like I'm looking at the patient came with vomiting, nausea, distended stomach. What? So I look, okay. So they could have Crohn's disease, or they could have this, or so they put on like 5 diseases that every 5 diseases that have those similar symptoms. So they are now testing them and ruling them out. That's why they are doing all those tests. Okay. Now, if you've done your research and you've watched this patient of yours, they were this and this and this, I'll tell them, no, test them for malaria. Okay. So I'm narrowing the test.
You're asking us to be proactive in the management of our health and in the management of the health of our loved ones.
Our loved ones, we must be advocates. You must be your own advocate, and then you must be the advocate for your patient.
All right.
Okay. Stop leaving everything to the doctor. Stop leaving everything to the medical field. Be informed. One of the things I wish somebody had told me this when my husband was sick. There are things that I would have asked. For example, my husband was bedridden for a long time. I could have asked, why are you people not taking this patient out of the bed to walk? He can walk. Why is he not being bed? For a long time, he couldn't eat. I could have asked, okay, he's not able to keep food down. Give him fluids. Give him something. You people literally killed this person. You starved them to death, dehydrated them. There are things that could have been done. Okay, he's in bed. If he cannot move, give him aspirin. It's a blood thinner. It would protect him. Because finally, what killed my husband was a blood clot.
Oh, yeah,
a blood clot. Aspirin. Aspirin is 10 shillings. So because you don't know, and that, I think for me, that's what makes me so passionate about it, because I'm like, some of these things are so basic. Yeah. And that's where the part in the healthcare system, unfortunately, it has been made to be profit driven. So like that's why
life, really, like everything else in life, because even when you talk about the legal profession, even when you talk about the real estate profession, everything has been commercialized. It's just life. So the way you can protect yourself as a consumer of whichever product or service is to gather as much information as you can, so that then you're making your decisions from an informed point of view. So that I agree with. Oh my goodness.
I don't know if I can mention an example that I had with that. And this was while I was still in nursing school. My dad got sick from depression. What helped me was my psych rotation, which was the mental health rotation. During that mental health rotation, what I learned, I was able to use that information to talk to my dad's doctor. As a result, I was able to identify the right doctor that I needed. I was able to talk, even though I was in the United States, I would call that doctor every morning and I would tell him, give him this, try this, try this. That's what helped my dad, because I was proactive, and the doctor was willing to listen to me because I was informed. And I remember when I visited and I told him,
But
we've
he
done
knew
this.
you're not just speaking from emotion. You're not coming
Yes.
from being the
Yes.
family member of the patient.
Yes.
You're a professional. You have information. You're speaking from a logical rather than an emotional point of view.
And yes.
Wow.
Yes. And he was able to listen to me. He was able to dialogue with me. He was able to give me suggestions. Like when my dad stabilized, he said, there's no need of us keeping him here in Nairobi. You said your home is next to Eldoret. I know another doctor in Eldoret. We take him to this doctor. This doctor.
Home. Yes.
Yeah. And then finally he can go home.
Beneficial for the patient.
Yes. And finally he was able to go home, and we were able to visit this doctor every week because it was near that. It's just a 30 minutes drive. So we were able to come visit the doctor. He was back home, and all that cut for us expenditure, because he was just being put in the hospital, nothing going, you all these big bills, nothing you're doing. You know, I remember, like, even my husband in the hospital, when they gave me the bill, I was like, for what? The bill came to 1.5 million.
In those days, and that was a lot.
In those days.
Yes, that was a lot of money at that time. Now,
yes,
we obviously have to do this again because we have barely touched the surface, but it seems to me like our hour is fast spent. Now, I would like, in conclusion, even though we are going to pick up this conversation once again, the reason actually we have started this recent interaction was you have come through our program and you have done a book. Maybe you give the audience a little insight into that, even though we are going to do a full discussion and interview on the book and all of that. But why did you decide to write a book? Who did you write a book for? And what's the message of the book?
Okay, first, I always wanted to write a book because I wanted to share my experience. And I was like, if all of us keep quiet and nobody ever talks about it, nothing is going to change. So I wanted to share my experience, especially my experience with my husband's sickness and the whole idea of how I went through the sickness. And in the book, wanted to be able to advise people what they can do, and you know, if they are faced with those situations. I also wanted to address the issue of widows. What do you do when you're a young widow? Widows, nobody talks about them, you know, and just to tell them, I've been there and here I am. So there's hope. So I wanted to be able to share my story. I wanted to be able to give hope, you know, to young widows especially. And then I also wanted to use this as a platform to encourage people to their opportunities. Somebody like me who missed my calling, and just sharing my story and somebody seeing, oh, I can do this, you know, or you've been forced to be a caregiver and you're like, okay, what am I going to do with all of this? To encourage somebody that you can learn it and you can perfect it and be, you know, a blessing to somebody else, you know. And so definitely I'm excited about the book, the Wealth Messenger. I was so glad to have gone through that. I cannot thank you enough. And since then, I have been educating myself. I went through another course of now how to write my story, because I wanted this to be my story, you know. And I was so glad the input, when I was able to put it in, the people who are helping me with doing the story, they have written it the way I want it. It's Joyce. I've given it to a friend of mine and he was like, I know you, Joyce, this is you. And I was like, yes, I want it to be me. I want you to read that story and be like you're talking to me.
Okay, beautiful. You wanted your experience to teach someone else. Is that
yes.
what you say?
Yes.
All right, that's beautiful. I look forward to reading your book. I actually look forward to it, although I'm a co-author in that same book. But I'm very excited to read your message and to see what you've been through and what the lessons are in it. Now, in conclusion, if you were to sit down your own 3 boys, because I think the purest love is a parent's love. If you were to give your 3 boys 3 tips on life, or even 2 or 1, what is it that you would tell your boys?
I would tell my boys to create wealth with God. And I know that's a mouthful. Of course, I would break it down for them. Why should I create wealth with God? Because when I create it myself, it will crush me. I would create it with God because he tells me in the book of Deuteronomy 18:17, he gives me the power to create wealth. He gives me the ability to create wealth. Ability means ideas, concepts, schemes, projects. the fact that the ideas are coming from God, they are going to be ideas that are not only going to impact me, but they are going to impact a whole community and a whole society. And finally, I always tell them, your purpose is bigger than you, must be bigger than you. In that case, you involve God in it, and you don't get selfish because you're broad. You're looking at changing generations. You're not just looking at, it's about me. I tell each of my boys, how have you influenced your current situation? My oldest boy is a teacher. I always tell him, go to school every day and tell yourself, I must make a difference for every child. Then also tell yourself, I must make an impact to my colleagues. You know, my other son is doing IT. I'm like, you must be the next Microsoft. Don't do Microsoft. Ask God what your idea is, but it has to be, yes, for your own. But I just use Microsoft as an example because that's what he likes. And I'm like, I want you to create, he's called Wayne, make Wayne Soft, something. It has to be bigger than you.
It doesn't have to be what someone else has already invented, because that's here already. So
that's already.
I like that. Create your wealth with God, find your purpose. Your purpose is bigger than you. And in conclusion?
And in conclusion, involve God in everything. Okay. Because there's a saying that says, one pastor shared with us and said, principles without the prince is like witchcraft. Principles without the prince is like witchcraft. You can learn the principles. If you don't involve God in it, they're not going to be helpful. That's why a lot of people become wealthy and it destroys them, because you don't know what to do with that wealth. But if you involve the prince, it is his ideas for the whole universe or for the whole community. So it's not left to you. You realize it's not in your hands, but he's using your hands, giving you his ideas to impact. So you make a difference. So you're not carrying the weight of, oh, what if it doesn't work? God, it was your idea. It's not in my hands. And it's your name that is at.
And God will carry it.
Yes, and it's your name that is going to be shamed. So you want it, you told me, do it. Otherwise, who's going to be put to shame? Yours and your God. You don't want your name to be put to shame. So I know you're not going to let me down.
Wow. Thank you. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Joyce, we are clearly going to do this again. When you're doing all of that, we're going to have this discussion and then we can focus more on the book and everything. But this has been beautiful as an introductory to get people to know who you are and everything. I'm going to put Joyce's contact details down here, and then you'll be able to reach out to her. If there's somebody I know who will open up her time, because Joyce lives a crazy busy life. We haven't even mentioned that you're in Carolina. She lives in the US. We're in a different time zone and everything, but Joyce will always make time. Whenever somebody has needed help and I have sent them to Joyce, she has always opened up her time and she has been able to help. So Joyce, thank you so much. This has been a great privilege. We are definitely going to do this again. But for now, have a very, very good day.
Thank you so much. It was nice talking to you, and God bless you and everybody watching.
All right, bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.